Let me guess, you clicked on this video because you think a lot about everything, your future, your next step, that one decision you keep putting off. You replay old conversations like worn-out tapes, dissecting what you said, how it might have sounded, what they might have thought. You plan for the best-case scenario, the worst-case scenario, and every possible outcome in between. You call it being careful, thoughtful, maybe even responsible. You tell yourself it's smart to think things through. That hesitation is maturity, that over-preparing is a kind of strength. But let me ask you something, and answer honestly, not just logically. What if all that mental rehearsal isn't wisdom? What if it's fear, dressed up in reason's clothing? See, overthinking has this strange way of feeling like control. It feels like you're doing something, like you're getting ahead of the problem, like you're building armor before stepping onto the battlefield. But if you look a little closer, you'll notice something else, something quieter and far more uncomfortable. You're afraid, not just of making the wrong move, but of being seen making the wrong move, of committing to a path and watching it collapse, of choosing boldly and failing visibly. So instead, you circle, you wait, you analyze, you polish every thought until it's so sharp it cuts you. And I get it. I've been there too, believing that if I could just think hard enough, I'd finally feel safe enough to act. That certainty would arrive like a green light, and then I could move. But the truth is, that green light rarely comes, and while you wait for it, life keeps moving without you. We confuse it for strategy, when really, it's hesitation. We dress it up with words like being wise or careful, when the truth is, we're just stalling. We call it insight, but more often than not, it's just a clever way of avoiding what we don't want to feel. Fear, failure, vulnerability. I've been there too, caught in the loop, believing that if I could just think it through one more time, I'd finally feel ready, that if I waited long enough, the fear would go away, and I could finally step forward with perfect clarity. No doubt, no regret, just confidence. But that moment never really comes, does it? Because no amount of thinking, no matter how sharp, no matter how honest, can fully prepare you for real life, for stepping into the unknown, for risking disappointment or rejection or even success. You can fill notebooks with plans, have a dozen backup strategies, and still feel that knot in your chest the moment you're asked to actually move. Here's what I had to learn the hard way. Clarity doesn't always come before the leap. Sometimes it only shows up after you've already jumped. So the question isn't just, am I prepared enough? The real question, the one that cuts through the noise, is this: are you thinking deeply? Or are you just circling fear? Because one leads you forward, and the other keeps you stuck in place, endlessly rehearsing a life you're too scared to live. It's a hard question to face, because overthinking doesn't feel like fear. Not at first. It feels like intelligence, like maturity, like you're being responsible. You're journaling, you're planning out every step. You're watching videos like this one, reading books, making lists, mapping out every possible outcome. And for a while, it feels productive, like you're making progress. But slowly, something starts to shift. Your ideas stay on the page, your plans gather dust, and your potential, this powerful, limitless force inside you, starts to feel like a distant promise, something you'll finally tap into someday, when you're ready, when the timing's right, when you're sure. But here's the truth: someday is a myth. It's a mirage that moves further away the more you chase it. And the longer you wait for that perfect moment of clarity, the more life begins to feel like it's happening at a distance, like you're watching it instead of living it. You don't feel safe, you feel stuck, trapped in a mind that never stops spinning. And this isn't laziness. Don't let anyone tell you that. This is exhaustion, the kind that comes from trying to outthink every possible danger, from carrying the weight of the unknown on your shoulders every single day. It's mental burnout masked as discipline. But deep down, if you're honest with yourself, you already know you weren't made to live solely in your head. You were made to move, to act, to stumble and learn and try again. And no amount of thinking can replace the clarity that only experience can bring. Friedrich Nietzsche, the 19th century philosopher often remembered for his intense critiques of morality and his relentless pursuit of personal truth, actually warned us about this exact trap. Not in the language of psychology or productivity hacks, but in something deeper, something existential. To Nietzsche, thinking was sacred, but only if it led somewhere. He didn't romanticize endless contemplation. He He believed thought should be a weapon, not a cage, a sharp instrument that cuts through confusion, falsehood, and fear, not a loop that spins you into paralysis. Real thinking, he said, strengthens the will. It forges character. It helps you act decisively in a chaotic world. But overthinking, that's the will turning inward, eating itself alive. Instead of becoming stronger through reflection, you get stuck, disarmed by your own mind. Nietzsche was clear. Hesitation wasn't harmless. It was dangerous, because the longer you wait to move, the more your ability to command yourself fades. He who cannot command himself, he wrote, will be commanded. That line hits hard because you can feel it. In moments when you've let decisions linger too long, when opportunities passed not because you weren't capable, but because you kept circling them, waiting to feel ready. Overthinking doesn't just cost you peace of mind, it chips away at something deeper, your agency, your sense of inner authority, that vital force that says, I choose, I act, I lead my life. And when you lose that, the world starts choosing for you. If this is striking a chord, if you've been circling the same decision for weeks, months, maybe years, this channel is for you. I make videos that explore the psychological and philosophical roots of overthinking, indecision, and self-doubt. So if you're ready to reclaim clarity, subscribe to the channel. And if you're already feeling it, tap that like button. Let's get you moving forward. There comes a moment in every overthinker's life, maybe it's happening for you right now, when you finally see it. You realize that thinking more, analyzing more, preparing more, isn't solving the problem. It is the problem. You're not getting closer to clarity. You're getting buried under layers of what-ifs and second-guessing. And it hits you. The very thing you believed would protect you, your relentless thought, has quietly become the thing holding you back. That's where the shift begins. It's subtle, but powerful. You stop asking, what else do I need to know? You stop trying to gather every possible piece of information, waiting for the moment when your plan is airtight. And instead, you ask something far more courageous. What's one thing I can do? Because that question invites movement. It brings you back into your body, into your life. It reminds you that clarity is often a result of action, not a prerequisite for it. The truth is, deep thinking is essential. It fuels movement when it's aimed at something real. But overthinking, that's just deep thinking with no destination. It burns fuel without moving the vehicle. So ask yourself, and be honest, are you using your thoughts to move forward or to stay safe? One empowers you, the other traps you, and the choice between them is where transformation begins. It's not always easy to tell the difference. From the outside, deep thinking and overthinking can look almost identical. Both involve reflection, analysis, careful consideration. But on the inside, the energy is completely different. A deep thinker reflects to understand. They know the world is uncertain, and they don't try to eliminate that uncertainty. They learn to live with it. They ask hard questions, but they also know when to stop asking and start doing. Thought becomes a tool, not a barrier. They use it to sharpen their instincts, not to silence them. An overthinker, on the other hand, analyzes to control. They crave certainty before they can act. They search for the perfect plan, the perfect timing, the perfect answer. And when they can't find it, they freeze, trapped in the loop of what if, trying to outsmart the unknown instead of stepping into it. The deep thinker makes space for intuition, thought and instinct working together like two hands building something real. But the overthinker, they bury intuition in noise. They second guess every gut feeling, every impulse, because it doesn't feel safe enough, precise enough, guaranteed enough. That's the difference. One seeks clarity as a companion to action. The other demands clarity as a condition for action and ends up waiting forever. You've probably felt both. Most of us have. You start out curious, thoughtful, trying to make sense of things, and somewhere along the way, without realizing it, you slide into hesitation. Mental spirals replace momentum. The very strength of your mind turns inward and becomes a trap. That's the line Nietzsche warned us about, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Overthinking doesn't just live in your head, it leaks into everything. It reshapes your world, not with dramatic events, but with quiet omissions. Every moment spent circling a decision is a moment you're not choosing, not acting, not stepping forward. And the truth is, life doesn't pause while you hesitate. It keeps moving, with or without your permission. And when you don't choose, others do. Someone else takes the opportunity. Someone else steps into the space you were meant to fill. And slowly, silently, your life begins to reflect not who you are, but what you feared. Opportunities don't slip away because you weren't capable. They slip away because you waited too long. You waited for the fear to go away. You waited to feel certain. You waited for a signal that was never coming. And that's exactly what Nietzsche tried to warn us about. In his world, hesitation wasn't just delay. It was a kind of surrender, a forfeiting of your own agency. Because in a world shaped by will, where your power comes from your ability to act, the absence of action is a decision. It's a silent agreement to let the world move on without you. That might sound harsh, but it's also empowering, because the opposite is just as true. Every moment you do choose, every time you act in the face of uncertainty, you reclaim yourself. You take back ground that fear quietly stole. You stop waiting for permission, and you start writing your life with your own hand. So maybe today is the day you stop circling and start moving forward, even if it's just one step. So how do you take your power back? Not by silencing your thoughts, not by pretending fear doesn't exist, and definitely not by waiting until you feel 100% certain, because that moment, if it ever comes, is usually too late. You take your power back by choosing, deliberately, courageously. You choose what matters to you, even if it scares you, even if it's uncertain, even if your brain keeps whispering, but what if you fail? What if you're not ready? You choose anyway. You take one honest, imperfect step towards something real, something meaningful, and in that step, you reclaim your momentum, not because everything is figured out, but because you finally stopped waiting for a perfect plan to save you. You're not here to outthink your life. You're here to live it. And living begins the moment you trust yourself, not to get it all right, not to avoid every mistake, but to figure it out as you go, to grow, adjust, and keep showing up even when things don't unfold the way you hoped. Nietzsche had a name for this. He called it the will to power, but not in the way people often misinterpret it, not about control over others, or ego, or dominance. He meant something deeper, the power to direct your life, to shape it with intention, to stop waiting for clarity to grant you permission, and instead to move with purpose, even through the unknown. That's where freedom begins, in choosing action over avoidance, direction over delay, and life over thought alone. So the next time your mind starts to spiral, when you're lying awake replaying conversations, or stuck looping through decisions you still haven't made, pause for a moment and ask yourself honestly, am I seeking clarity or am I avoiding risk? Because they can look the same from the outside, but one brings you closer to yourself, the other holds you back. Real clarity doesn't usually arrive through more thinking. It doesn't come wrapped in certainty or tied up in a flawless plan. It comes through movement, through choosing, through acting, through putting yourself in motion, even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. Your thoughts aren't the enemy. In fact, they're one of your greatest tools. They can help you reflect, prepare, and navigate with wisdom, but they're not the answer either. At some point, thinking has to give way to action. Insight has to be paired with courage, and reflection must be matched by movement. Otherwise, you're just building castles in your mind, places to hide instead of places to grow. So use your thoughts wisely. Let them guide you. Let them inform your next step. But never, ever let them become the excuse for not taking it. Because the life you want, the clarity you seek, won't be found by circling the question. It will be found by living your way into the answer. This is where the transformation begins, not when the fear disappears, not when your mind finally quiets down, but when you choose to move anyway, despite the noise, despite the doubt. That's what real freedom looks like, not the absence of thought, but the presence of will, a quiet inner strength that says, I hear the fear, and I'm still going. You don't need perfect clarity or absolute peace to take the next step. You just need the courage to act in the midst of uncertainty. to stop waiting for permission from your mind and start listening to the part of you that already knows what matters. Because thinking with purpose isn't endless, it has a rhythm, a point where reflection must give way to motion. That's when you become the one commanding your life, not ruled by fear, not trapped in spirals, but present, decisive, and finally, alive. So tell me in the comments, what's one decision you've been overthinking? Just name it. That's your first act of courage. Pull it out of the fog, give it shape, and then, imperfectly, bravely, take the first step, because you've thought long enough. It's time to live.